South Wales lockdown may be extended for 4 weeks. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, because sadly it looks like the New South Wales lockdown may be extended for another 4 weeks. I can't imagine anyone would be surprised at that. Sadly, it seems to be the go-to and only response. No other strategies are really even discussed anymore in the media or by our political leaders. So, let's look at the numbers. There are 172 acquired cases locally, 0 interstate and 3 from overseas. So that brings it the total to 175 new cases. They have 2,123 active cases. They've had a total 7,928 cases, and 66 lives were unfortunately lost. We can see here they've had how many doses of the vaccine? In total, 3.4 million. By the New South Wales? Total, 3.4 million in total. Okay. So, here's the thing. With regards to the vaccination rollout, if they really push for only one vaccine, it's going to take time, and while the effectiveness of it won't be as effective, it's not as high, particularly for these new strains that they're all worried about and they're also scared about. So, that's another question. Will it give people a false sense of safety that they'll be able to go about their business and then have that rug pulled from under them? Let's have a look at this article from Alexis Carey on news.com.au, which I think is leaked intentionally to prepare people for what's going to come tomorrow. So, New South Wales reportedly considering a 4-week lockdown extension. New South Wales Crisis Cabinet is reportedly considering a 4-week extension of lockdown, which would take the stay-at-home orders into late August. New South Wales Crisis Cabinet is reportedly considering a 4-week extension of lockdown, which would take the stay-at-home orders into late August. A significant extension of the lockdown is set to be announced by Premier Gladys Berejiklian on Wednesday, and a 4-week extension is one of the options being considered, according to several media reports on Tuesday evening. And they're talking about the total number of cases there. And one viewer was telling me that local council elections are also being shifted till December. So it's going to be interesting. Let's go through these posts, their blog posts. So a number of New South Wales police officers have been forced into isolation after they were potentially exposed to a person infected with COVID-19. New South Wales Police confirmed on Tuesday night that a number of staff from the Southwest Metropolitan Region had been identified as potential contacts with a COVID-19 positive case. All affected police employees have been directed to get tested and undertake 14 days isolation in compliance with the public health order, a spokesperson said. The exposed officers were undertaking work duties at a venue of concern in southwestern Sydney. Here we go. And more COVID alerts. Sydney's northern beaches, the inner west and Bondi are all back on high alert after New South Wales Health issued a warning for an additional 32 venues deemed COVID-19 exposure sites. A course at Warringah Mall, Woolworths at Bondi Beach, and a handful of supermarkets in Leichhardt are among the sites visited by a confirmed coronavirus case who was potentially infectious at the time. A Bunnings warehouse in Bellambi and Illawarra region has also been named as a venue of concern. So, more details on lockdown extension. With Sydney's lockdown looming for another month, changes to current restrictions are on the horizon for education and construction sectors. Will they open the construction sector? Construction work will begin again on Saturday, according to The Australian, but with more safeguards and capacity limits in place. However, tradesmen from Sydney southwest and west, the areas hit hardest, still won't be able to work. Now, this is going to disproportionately affect certain parts of Sydney. Let's have a look at this property diagram here, because, well, this is showing you unit price growth across Sydney, and I think it's probably a pretty good indicator of the wealth of the different communities and regions there as well. So who do you think is going to cop it the most from all of these restrictions? With the lockdown set to continue past Year 12's trial exams, the Daily Telegraph says the final year students might also be able to get rapid COVID testing. Essential workers may also receive rapid testing, which can return a result in as quickly as 10 minutes. 7 News claims that more financial support for affected workers is also under consideration. Well, they're going to have to do something. They're restricting the ability. They're not allowing people to work. They've got a duty of care then. They've taken on that responsibility from people. They don't want people to manage the risk themselves. So then you've got a duty of care to ensure that you mitigate the harm that you do to people. What do you reckon? And, of course, you realize this is going to be used to just hound, attack, and stigmatize anyone who protests. Anyone at all. And I'm seeing it. People are just going along with the media line. They're not realizing a lot of normal people there, a lot of desperate people there, who are not getting any support, who are not getting any help, who are not seeing an exit path out of this. Because what if, okay, right now it's Delta that everyone's scared about. What if you get the Peruvian Lambda coming over? We've got such a culture of safety here. Safety, safety, safety. Everything needs to be safe. It's always someone else's problem. Go to the government for regulation. More rules, more regulation. That'll keep us safe. We can't have, anything but safety here. Do we have a culture that can stomach a certain level of death to ensure the economy keeps open? There's the question I put to you. So, the green light for singles bubble. In the same cabinet meeting where the lockdown extension was announced, New South Wales leaders also made another big call on restrictions. Despite today making the highest number of locally acquired cases in New South Wales' current outbreak, it's good news for anyone living alone. Well, that has to be something to address mental health issues. If you're living alone, I can't even imagine how hard this would be. Not even having contact with someone else. New South Wales Crisis Cabinet this evening gave the go-ahead for a singles bubble, according to the Daily Telegraph. In recent news, New South Wales' intimate partner rule has been slammed because it meant only people in relationships could visit each other's houses. Well, why not? What's wrong with that? Victoria introduced a singles bubble rule during the state's 112-day lockdown last year, which allowed single people to nominate one family member or friend to visit for companionship. It's believed New South Wales rule will be similar. Before now, only couples in Sydney could visit each other's home. Oh, so you couldn't have your parents coming over or your dad visit or something like that, or a mate. Surely you could just lie and say you're in a relationship, but then you'd probably get reported on Reddit, wouldn't you? 2 people from different households can meet up for exercise in open areas, but both have to live within 10 kilometres of each other. The decision was ultimately made in the New South Wales Cabinet meeting over mental health concerns for those living alone, the publication reported. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And here we have reports of the 4-week lockdown. New South Wales government officials confirming there will be a 4-week lockdown extension announced tomorrow. Well, there you go. So, lying pollies fight on TV. What's a Labor and Liberal MP have had a stoush on TV when they squabbled over what should be done about New South Wales COVID-19 situation. Liberal MP Tim Wilson accused Labor MP and Shadow Assistant Treasurer Stephen Jones of lying during an ABC interview on Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Jones called for harsher measures in New South Wales because he said Victoria's 112-day lockdown had clearly worked. This is what people think now. I think New South Wales lockdown does not require those harsher measures in play. The same sort of measures Tim Wilson was writing to the Human Rights Commissioner last year, asking the Human Rights Commissioner to overturn, he said. This is actually a lie, a furious Mr. Wilson interjected. I asked them to provide the evidence base for the decisions. I'm listening to you in silence. You will do the same, mate, Mr. Jones fired back. Later on, Mr. Wilson said feistily, what I wrote to the Human Rights Commissioner last year was to write to the basis of the Victorian curfew. So Mr. Jones is lying to your viewers. Well, there you go. Teacher suspended for anti-lockdown views. A private school teacher has been suspended for attending Sydney's anti-lockdown rally on Saturday, which was slammed as selfish super spreader event. There you go. People are losing their jobs. People are getting reported by it. By exercising, they've got a right to protest. Those rights don't disappear during an emergency situation, everyone. And I know some people support protesting, but they want it to be done safe. Well, what if it's never safe, everyone? What if people are willing to risk for their freedom, or for even just the simple right to go more than 10 kilometers from their house? The King's School in Parramatta found out a teacher had been to the protest after he posted about it online, visible to some of his students. This is me standing up for what I believe in, rather than being a keyboard warrior, a pacifist, or worse, a coward in my own mind, the teacher wrote in the now deleted post. In a letter to parents, the school's principal, Tony George, said the teacher had been reported to police and suspended. Okay, so people are getting fired for protesting. While I appreciate that people are free to hold their own views and beliefs, this does not extend to their behavior and conduct. Well, it's a school, they're allowed to do it. Do you want your children going to a school like that? That's the market, everyone. Queensland fines Sydney escapee 10 grand. A Sydney man who escaped lockdown by sneaking into Queensland has been slugged with more than 10,000 in fines. His female accomplice was fined more than 4,000. Why is the bloke fined more? Can MGTOW explain that to me, guys? It's the society we're in. He is probably driving the car. Unaware he was infected with the Delta strain of COVID-19, Queensland police allege the 26-year-old Sydney man flew to Ballina in far north New South Wales, where a Brisbane woman, aged 35, picked him up and drove him across the border. During his New South Wales flight, he infected the air hostess, causing 6 regional flights to be ordered into isolation. Police say he attended 3 stores in Brisbane suburb of Chermside, where he used untrue information to check in to shops on July 15th. After being... See, I'm not even used to doing that anymore. After being picked up by cops, he was placed into quarantine, but verbally abused staff and kept opening the door to his room without wearing a mask. The 26-year-old was issued with 3 infringement notices. Okay, this is why he was fined more. What do we have here? Health worker in isolation after lift bungle. 2 West Australian healthcare workers have been forced to self-isolate for a fortnight after a lift bungle left them exposed to COVID-19. Health staff yesterday transported 3 critically ill crew members off the Dara Krishna cargo ship which docked in the WA port of Fremantle earlier that day. However, a mechanical failure in a lift during the transfer is believed to have exposed 2 healthcare workers at the Fiona Stanley Hospital to the disease. Fully vaccinated staff, decked out in full PPE gear, transported the first sick crew member, which involved taking them into a lift to reach the right level in the hospital. The lift was meant to be locked, and left to ventilate on the hospital's helipad level, but instead it kept working, where 2 other healthcare workers stepped inside at a lower level. Well, this is why you need security manning it. Border changes for South Australia and Victoria. The Northern Territory and Australian Capital Territory have opened up borders for Victoria, South Australia and regional New South Wales residents. On Tuesday afternoon, Northern Territory Health announced it was revoking the hotspot status in Victoria and South Australia, effective from midnight tonight. This means anyone from Greater Melbourne, the city of Greater Geelong, the Shire of Mooloolaba, Bass Coast Shire, Mildura Rural City or Metropolitan Adelaide can avoid hotel quarantine if they travel to the NT. The ACT has also relaxed rules. So, there you go, everyone. A 4-week lockdown extension for New South Wales and, well, a lot of other things. Looks like construction will be getting back, but not for those people in the southwest. So, what's the solution to this if you're feeling frustrated, angry, and annoyed? The fact that people who are protesting are now openly getting arrested, and they'll be blamed for this. Well, I would suggest, I'm an advocate for reform of the current political system and shift of the Overton window. I would suggest reach out to your local members. Highlight them to the fact that you want to open up and you want people to manage the risks themselves. That you'd be happy to assume that risk. If enough people do, then they essentially can. But the question is, are enough Australians willing to take that risk? That's the concern. I think a lot of them are happy. are afraid. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Sorry to all of those of you in New South Wales. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. Join us on YouTube or Patreon. Sign up for SelfWealth or Stake. Use our affiliate links for Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.